If you've ever had an ice cream at Donnelly's, north of Saranac Lake, you know two things. First of all, the ice cream is delicious. And you also know the view. You're licking ice cream, looking across this field to a jagged range of peaks culminating in majestic Whiteface Mountain. Well, a conservation group has bought that field, protecting that view. And they want to build a trail that's accessible to all people in wheelchairs, people dealing with other mobility issues. But there's been some pushback. We sort through the planned trails at Glenview Preserve on today's story of the day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Long Run Wealth, an SEC-registered investment advisor in Lake Placid, providing comprehensive wealth management, retirement, and financial planning solutions. LongRunWealth.com. And from SciTech Business Solutions, training and consulting services to help businesses grow. More information at citec.org.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Wednesday, September 25th. First up, New York's Education Department wants to make it more of a priority for students to communicate in more than one language. As Noelle Evans with the New York Public News Network reports, there's a growing push to include indigenous languages, too.
Timothy Williams recently graduated from Silver Creek Central School District in western New York. According to the district, about 12% of students there are Native American. Williams is one of them. His diploma came with a seal of biliteracy. That distinction is awarded to students who can communicate at a high level in at least one other language than English. His second language, Seneca. And part of his education included spending time with elders who speak it fluently.
We got to cook with them, we got to eat with them, and we got to share time with them. Spending time with them was and is a privilege.
A privilege because so few first language speakers are left. And that goes for most indigenous languages across the country. That is a direct result of genocide and the brutal assimilation of children in American Indian boarding schools that were part of U.S. government policy.
Our ancestors weren't allowed to speak their language, and now that I have the opportunity to try and grow and foster the learning and be a part of this process is just a small piece to the puzzle.
Williams spoke in a recorded statement to the Board of Regents, which governs the state education department. He and more than 10,000 other students around the state earned the biliteracy seal this year. Helena Kottman in the Hudson Valley was another. She says learning 5 world languages has expanded her ability to connect more deeply with others.
To learn someone else's language is to enter that person's world, their way of thinking and acting and talking. For example, when I speak with my mother in Japanese, her native language, I feel privileged to know her in a way that, for instance, my father, who speaks Japanese but not fluently, can never fully know.
While students like Williams and Kottman have been able to connect to their family's first languages, Vice Chancellor Lester Young says some students may never get the opportunity to know theirs.
There are those of us who will never know what their native language was for lots of reasons. And as I sit here and I'm listening, I'm wondering, what would it be like if young people had this opportunity, and how might that impact their lives as they go forward?
Regent Shino Tanikawa says the growing number of students learning multiple languages shows a shift away from an assimilation mindset that immigrants have encountered for generations in the U.S.
As a former English language learner, there was a stigma associated with speaking languages other than English. And I think a program like this is really important in breaking down that stigma.
But Regent Frances Wills says those attitudes still persist.
Right now in our society, we have, unfortunately, a trend toward a lack of understanding about the value of human communication through a variety of languages and cultures.
Out of more than 1,200 schools in New York State, about 500 offer the biliteracy seal on high school diplomas. In Rochester, I'm Noelle Evans for the New York Public News Network.
An Adirondack Green Group is trying to build a small network of ADA-accessible trails just north of Saranac Lake. The goal is to fill an outdoor recreation gap for people with disabilities in one of the most beautiful parts of the park. But the project has had some detractors. David Escobar has our story.
It's almost peak fall foliage season in the Adirondacks. That means many highway shoulders have become unofficial pull-off spots for tourists and locals to snap photos of the orange and yellow mountain landscapes. And outside of Saranac Lake, the view looking out toward Glenview Preserve is a fan favorite.
Many people, this is their favorite vista in the park.
Becca Holter is giving me a tour. She leads our group through fields of milkweed into a forested wetland. Holter is Stewardship and GIS Manager for the Adirondack Land Trust, which bought Glenview Preserve in 2016. Over the past 5 years, the Land Trust has been raising money through grants and private donations to develop over 2 miles of new trails at Glenview. Halter says she envisions a trail system that'll give visitors better access to stunning views of Mackenzie Mountain and the high peaks, views you wouldn't catch otherwise.
So getting to experience that, not just on the side of the road, but walking through the field and through the forest, and then providing an opportunity where almost everyone will be able to walk their property.
But right now, Glenview Preserve is largely untouched, save for a few old logging roads and some maple syrup taps. So Halter asks us to use our imagination as we walk down an overgrown access road. She pulls out design mock-ups of what the accessible trails could look like.
So this is the accessible trail, that surfacing.
Nick Friedman, Executive Director of Accessible Adirondack Tourism, is along for the walk. He's reviewing the Land Trust's plans.
Strictly speaking, you need 36 inches for each wheelchair. You should have one in opposite directions. 36 inches is 3 feet, 6 feet meets the requirement.
Friedman has been consulting on the project. He says the demand for accessible trails is only growing.
We have an aging population, so the proportion of people with disabilities to those who may not identify as having one is only increasing.
Over a quarter of adults in New York State has a disability. But in the Adirondacks, less than 5% of hiking trails within an hour's drive of Saranac Lake are accessible to people with disabilities. Connie Prickett says that's something the Land Trust is trying to change. She's the organization's communications director.
One of our values is diversity, equity, inclusion, and access as part of that. And so we are striving for more inclusive outdoor recreation opportunities. If we're able to, create a model for this kind of outdoor recreation where there is this is a gap that we're filling.
But turning this vision into a reality comes with a steep price tag. The Accessible Trail Project at Glenview Preserve is expected to cost over $2 million. There's also been community pushback. During a public hearing in 2022, neighbors raised concerns over increased traffic and obstructed mountain views that could come with the project. So the Land Trust scaled back its original plans, scrapping ideas for a large pavilion and outdoor yoga platform, and reducing the trail length and parking capacity. They're also asking the Department of Transportation to lower the speed limit around the preserve and to add a safer driveway for parking lot access. Prickett says the project will continue balancing community concerns with the preserve's original goal, creating a destination worth visiting for everyone, including people with disabilities.
That effort that it takes to pack up a car and come over with, if you're traveling with somebody with a disability or they're traveling themselves here, it's more effort than what it takes you and I to get somewhere. And so to know what to expect when you get here and then to have this opportunity for 2.25 miles of trail is pretty amazing, and it's worthwhile.
The Land Trust hopes to begin trail construction in 2025, but it still needs to secure the necessary funding and permits. Once the Adirondack Park Agency reviews the preserve plans, there will be another opportunity for community feedback this fall. David Escobar, North Country Public Radio in Harrietstown.
David Escobar is a Report for America Corps reporter. He reports on diversity issues in the Adirondacks through a partnership between North Country Public Radio and Adirondack Explorer. We have more news all the time on our website, ncpr.org. Music today by Caitlin Scholl of Lake Placid and Oscar Sarmiento of Potsdam. I'm David Summerstein, North Country Public Radio.